I'm Tiffany Wizard. I will be going over amendment requests. Most of you have probably done one of these at some point during the project. Ashley, can you click? Thank you. Oh, you gotta open that. There we go. All right, grant amendments. What are they? These are going to be modifications or changes to your budget line items, changes to program activities, services, or changes to the original scope of the project. When do you request an amendment? These can be bids coming higher than expected, changes in the form of change orders, or you need to change the scope of work. We do highly recommend not changing the scope of work for a project unless it's absolutely necessary. And to submit an amendment, it must be done by submitting a completed funding approval, grant amendment, grant agreement amendment request, or FARR. As you know, we all love our acronyms. So how do you fill out an amendment form? First, you want to go to the CDBG website. Under the Forms tab, it'll be under the first section. It'll say Financial. It's labeled as the FADA amendment request. It's highly recommended that you download the form prior to filling it out. After this presentation is posted to the website, you'll also be able to download the form by clicking here. You'll want to start by filling out the top portion of the form. That's going to be the basic information about the project and the subrecipient. That's going to be their contact information, the amendment request number, and who's filling out the form. A lot of the times it's going to be you guys sitting in the room. And the date of the request. Next, you'll start by filling out the first few questions. Questions 1 through 5, that's going to be your basic information outlining what the amendment's for. Question 1 is going to be asking about why is additional funds necessary? What did you guys do to work through trying to lessen the need for funds? Looking through financials to see if there's additional funds from like communities that they could add in as match. Question 2, that's asking if there's modifications to the scope, service area, or number of beneficiaries. If there is changes to any of these, it will need to be documented. And please note, it may also require change to the environmental review. But any changes to this area could result in it not meeting the national objective. So any changes you make to beneficiaries, scope of work, or services need to still meet a national objective. 2A, that box just means that you understand that if it triggers that environmental review amendment, you just gotta have that done before you request the funds from an RFF. Question 3, that's just going over the budget. Does it still meet the threshold for the $5,000 per family beneficiary? To determine that, you divide the total CDBG funded budget by the number of family beneficiaries found in the funding approval, If you are requesting a change in number of beneficiaries, please use the new family beneficiaries number to verify that you're still within that threshold. Question 4, that's where you outline if you're changing professional services for engineering, architectural, administrative services. That's different from the workload in the application and justifying this change. If not, just write NA. Question 5, that's just asking proposed non-construction amounts stay within the maximum cap of activity fees, which we've covered in previous presentations. Question 6, that's just your supporting documentation that's going to be submitted with the amendment request. Questions 7 and 8, those are certifications that the request for additional funds do not replace matching funds, and the project expenditures meet the standards for reasonable, allowable, and applicable. And the last section you see on the first page is going to be the box here for signatures. This should be the last thing done after reviewing that all the information is accurate and complete, and that it will need to be signed by the highest elected official for the summary submitted. Sorry, I can't walk. All right, and then the second page of your amendment is going to be your budget section. This, a lot of times, is where I see people have the most difficult time filling out. So it's easiest to fill out your activities and your program activities, activity number, and the funding year. These all come from your funding approvals that are sent out. Or if you submitted another amendment form, you'll pull the information from there. Next, you'll want to fill in the existing budget, which is the top fillable line. That's the information that you have already, the budget you're working with. Next, you want to fill in the requested budget amount. That's the new budget you're asking for, which is the second. And if no funds for that activity line are changing, you'll want to put in the already existing budget, since that's not changing by anything. And that last column is the amount change. That'll auto-fill with the difference between the two, which is kind of nice. And you'll see here the match ratio. That'll auto-calculate as you're filling in the form. So these are not numbers you have to fill out and calculate yourself. And then at the bottom here is your totals. As you're filling in the form, these will auto-calculate. You'll just want to verify that the form has calculated the math correctly. And please, anytime the form does not calculate something correctly, let us know that so we can go in and make sure to fix the form, so that way it's doing its job correctly for you guys. We don't want to add any extra work for you. Supporting documentation, what is it and why is it needed? These could be signed contracts, change orders, subrecipients' financial statements or budgets. These are required for amendments, for all amendments, and we cannot approve amendments without these, especially if we're requesting additional funds, we've got to have these financial statements and budget from the sub-recipients. We could also get letters from an engineer, architecture. They could be recommending a firm, a contractor from a bid, survey tabulation sheets, other invoices, receipts, documentation, so your bid documents. The supporting documentation supports the request, provides additional details that otherwise isn't available elsewhere in the form. They also create a story for your compliance specialist and the application review committee, or ARC, to make a decision. So it builds this narrative, as you've heard over the last couple of days, narratives, to be able to make a decision and justify why we're getting additional funding. So what happens after the amendment is submitted to your compliance specialist? Not sure if many of you know what happens. Probably submit it and think, oh, now it's a waiting game. Well, there's a few things that can happen. If you're requesting just no actual additional funding, just kind of movement between lines, your compliance specialist can approve that. We don't have to send it to ARC. We'll just send it off to our financial compliance specialists, which are Lisa or Chris, and they'll sign off on it or ask for additional information. And we'll send back the approval to you guys and the communities. Now, if you're asking for additional funds, but under 10,000, your compliance specialist can also approve that. It will also have to go to financial specialists to verify there's available funding. They will approve or deny based on funding availability. But if you are requesting funds over 10,000, it does have to go in front of ARC. So they're the deciding factor. Now, if you are de-obligating any funding, if you're just straight up de-obligating funding from a specific activity line, that can be done by your compliance specialist. If it's at the end of a project and it's complete, you're getting ready to close, you can submit that de-obligation with the certificate of completion. You don't have to submit an extra form of the part of this. Now, if you're de-obligating in one funding line, but wanting to add in an additional activity line, that would have to go in front of ARC for approval. Before we practice, one thing too is when it does go in front of ARC, one of three things can happen. It can be approved, it could be denied, and denials could be lack of funding, or there's not enough information, or it's not an eligible activity, anything along those lines, or it could be tabled. If it's tabled, a lot of times they do need additional information, and you'll be emailed with requests to provide that additional information, and then brought back to their meeting for them to review again. And they do meet, they try to meet every Thursday, but it may not be able to. So our decisions can take a couple weeks for you guys to get a response. So just know, when it does go to them, it's not an immediate answer. got time to practice? All right, so I decided to have a little fun with this, because I know we're after lunch, we're all kind of tired, and all our other presentations are kind of, lots and full of information. So, I created my own funding approval. This is for the city of Oz. They were awarded a streets and water sewer project on May 20th of this year. The city will be extending and paving the two major roads throughout the city, the Yellow and Red Brick Roads. The city's current water and sewer system is outdated and has not been updated since 1939. The city will be updating the system within city limits. The engineer is working closely with Dorothy Gale, the project administrator. The project went out to bid on June 19th. The city received 4 bids, all of which came in over bid. The city has reviewed their financials to determine that they have additional money. $10,000 in total to provide. $5,000 for each activity that can be put towards the project, as well as their public works director has a few employees available for additional in-kind work. Even though there's additional match, there's still a gap. So the city has decided to submit amendment requests for CDBG to cover the remaining $20,000. So let's walk through, fill out this amendment. So where should we start? In this, who is the subrecipient in my little tale? Yes. Anybody remember the project number from the first? Anyone? So it's 2025 RE08. So this is their first amendment. And I realized I didn't put the email address on there, so I'm giving that one. What's the address for the city? Yes. And the city? Yes. And who would be filling it out? Who's their project administrator? Yes. Anybody know the name of Dorothy Gale? Who that would be from? Yes. I had a theme when I made this. All right. And we're filling this out today, so we put today's date. So, how do you think number 1 should be answered? Question 1. Extra cash. Yes. What else? Okay. Anything else? Yes. So, yeah, project went out to bid. Bids came in over. City was able to reevaluate budget and workload for Public Works Department to determine they could provide more match and in-kind. So, question 2, they didn't have any changes to their scope, they're not adjusting anything else. They're just needing a little more money. So, and on that, question 3, I did the math for us. I calculated with the new numbers and everything, since it's not changing anything, we're still within that 5,000 per family beneficiary. We were actually at 2,559. So we're still good. There's a little lag. All right. And were we changing anything for professional services? All right. Nope. And do you think we were staying within the caps for non-construction? Yeah. So what kind of supporting documentation do you think we should submit with this amendment? Yep. Letter from the engineer. Yep. Financial statements. Anything else?
Other documents like the bid tab.
Yes. Those are definitely good to submit with this to justify the amendment request. And question 7 and 8. Are we replacing any match? And do you think what we're asking, and these are reasonable, allowable, applicable, given what you know for 2 CFR 200.403 or 2 CFR 200.405? Yeah. Next would be your budget. So we're starting off with our funding approval. So this was just information pulled from our funding approval on that first slide from our best practice. So, does anybody remember what we do for activities that aren't changing? Yes. So what 2 activities aren't changing? Yes. So these would go in the new, or in the requested budget. So that would leave the bottom out empty when you do these forms. All right. And what should we fill in next? Streets? All right. And how much did we want for streets? Yeah. So that difference and we're adding cash match for streets and that in kind. And as this form fills out, when you're doing it, automatically those ratios will change. So you started off with 4.03%. The change was a 3.1%. The new budget that you're asking is 7.19% for that activity. The water wastewater, we do the same thing. Did autofill, that amount change after filling in? And so would our new match ratio. Any questions with that? All right. And then we'd want to double check our total budget. So this is just making sure that everything calculated from the numbers we added, and we've got that total change for each line, and if those numbers are correct, we're gonna send this form to the highest elected official, and for the city of Oz, we're gonna send it to their mayor, which is Mayor Linda North. She's gonna sign off on it, put her wonderful signature. And then George Gale's gonna send it over to compliance. And they're going to send it over to ARC, and they review it and send it over.